Hey, it's Laura with Following the Paper Trail, and today is this is week 4 of the Seek, Gather, Create Scavenger Hunt Challenge. And I'm here with the last 3 of my projects from this week, because each week I've done a book, a art journal spread, and an assemblage piece, mainly because I just wanted people to realize that it doesn't always have to be art journaling when you're doing one of these challenges. You can do whatever kind of art that you like to be doing. So with this one, our challenge was something botanical, something texture, something orange, and a receipt. Now, with mine, the receipt's a little bit hidden on some of them, but I did use all 4 on each of them. So the book, to start with, has my detachable binding on it, and with 3 of the 4 books, I did them with the detachable signature binding. The link to that is in it's in my profile on my Instagram, but I'll put it into the description for this video. And with this one, I used little the wrap tie things, and they also all the signatures have a jacket on them, which I will be showing how to do that one coming up soon. I did that in the book before the last one, before the girl one. And with this one, I just put some little eyelets in and had the string coming out through the jacket to wrap around. On the front, excuse me, I have a little fairy that I had made last year out of the Fimo clay. Well, but it wasn't Fimo. It's that, the plastic clay that you then bake. And she's been just kind of sitting here in my studio, kind of watching what's going on, waiting for kind of her time to shine. Well, I decided to go ahead and put her on to the cover of the book. It makes the book cover a little bit thick, but I think she fits in real well. I used a little sewing hoop that she kind of got to sit on. And here's my receipt. Obviously, it was an orange book, and then there's orange papers. There's texture all over this thing. Excuse me. And then the botanical is, I have some flowers and other leaf item type things on it. So real quick inside, because I haven't finished the inside of any of the 4 books, because that's something that I'm going to be doing over the course of the next several months, is working on the insides of the books. But with this one, each of the signatures, as I said, has a jacket around it. So here's the signature, and the jacket slips around the spine bar for each of the signatures. Now with these, keeping with the wrap ties, what I've done is I have an envelope, and then the envelope gets split open to where on each side then it's got some tall, skinny signatures, and a new pocket is formed. And so then that just wraps around there. And then on the inside, this piece here is attached to here. So it holds this one closed and this one closed. And this is just an open pocket. I may fold that down on some of them. I haven't decided. And then the signature inside. Now I have some of my digital papers in here. And now these are digital papers that have some fairies and butterflies and stuff on them. And these are ones that are exclusive to my Patreon. People at the middle level and above, they get these to download as part of their stuff they get this month. So it's got the pocket here in the back, and the same sort of thing. So that's the jacket around that signature. Now the 2 of the signatures, the 2 outside ones have this. The 2 inside signatures are made with file folders, and they just fold out. I can keep them folded out, or I can attach them at the bottom and turn them also into a pocket. And again, the signature with fairies in it. There's two fairy. Oh, must be these guys that have two. There's two different fairy ones. There's that one. There's, oh, this is the other one that's in there. So then we have the file folder jacket on the third one. And I used a variety of scrapbooking 12 by 12 papers. That's a charcoal paper. When I printed my fairy stuff, I printed them on mixed media paper. I have like rice paper, book papers, all sorts of different kinds of papers in here. Some echo paper in the middle. And then this last one, there's a blue fairy. There's this one. When it comes to doing your digital stuff, you don't have to print them just on cardstock. You can print them pretty much on anything you want. Then it has a silk ribbon on it for the tie. Now for the spread, I did, and this one we first came out with what we were going to, each of us for each week, each of the four of us, Lisa, Tina, and Melanie and myself each week contributed one of the 4 items. They've been awesome to co-host with. It's really been a super fun experience. And I knew as soon as one of the weeks had orange in it that I was going to do a layout based on something that's very current, but given the fact that there's so much going on in the world right now, this has really not been super, here, at least here in the US, hasn't been super heard about. And that's the number of Indigenous children from some as young as 3 on up that during the course of fairly recent history were removed from their homes and sent to schools, quote unquote. Thousands never made it home. I know and I tried to get the most accurate numbers that I could find this morning. Right now, it's been very publicized in Canada. But the same thing has happened here in the US. We're just not hearing about as many of them. But now that we have a Native American Secretary of Interior, I think it's going to come out a lot more here in the US as well. But in Canada so far, as of today, they have found over 6,500 children in unmarked graves at these schools that were run by Catholic Services. And these were children that were removed from their families and taken to these schools to, in some ways, be re-educated, not just educated. They were taken away from not just their families, but their cultures and their ancestral histories. And as a result of that, so many of these Indigenous people not only have lost part of their past, they've lost part of their future with these children. These children were in many times physically abused, sexually abused, not necessarily treated as human. And so this is just a really hard subject to talk about, but so a little bit more, so it's 6,500 in Canada, and those schools were operated from in around 1860s until as recently as 1998 is when they were closing some of the last one. And in Canada, over 150 children attended these schools. So when you think about 150 attended and 6,500 never made it home, I don't know what that percentage is off the top of my head, but it's pretty frightening. In the US, the school started a little bit earlier. They started in around 1820 and they went until the 1970s. And there were over 350 boarding schools in the US. As a child growing up in Alaska, I knew about that there were kids that were taken away from their villages and sent to schools. You knew that as as young as in grade school when I was growing up, because you learned about the Alaska state flag, which was designed by a young Aleut boy who lived. Oh, it was right at the head of the Aleutian chain is where he was born. And then he was taken to a school in Seward, where I spent a lot of my childhood, out on a boat in Seward. But you always knew about that he had lived in the Jesse Lee home in Seward when he designed the flag. And the only reason he was there is because he was removed from his village, which was a very small, tiny village. He was removed from his village and went to live in the school. And this was very common throughout all of Alaska, is that once kids reached school age, they were taken away from their families, from their culture, from the life they knew, and sent to other parts of Alaska, or in many cases, even to out of state down to the lower 48, which is what the contiguous United States is called by up there. And I'm sure there are many of those kids that didn't make it home. Further connection to all of this is that when I finished school and was working up there as an architect, many of the projects that I worked on were in villages where we were building schools in these villages, because with the Native Land Claim Settlement Act that happened in the early 70s, it kind of gave not just land back to the indigenous people of the state, but it also gave them the power and the resources needed to be able to maintain their culture. And so we were building schools in very remote parts of Alaska. A lot of people don't realize how little there is in terms of roads in Alaska, that everything is mainly reached by boat or by plane, whether it be via the ocean or rivers and such. And there's many parts of Alaska that just are hard to reach. So it was a challenge working on these schools in these small towns and villages, but it allowed those kids to be able to stay at home and maintain their cultural identity. So this is the kind of thing that I grew up with in Alaska. The whole equal rights movement and stuff, the civil rights movement of the 60s, is kind of just, blurry pictures on a black and white TV in my head, because that's not something that I had much experience with up there. But what I did have experience with was how the indigenous people were treated. And it taught me a lot of empathy for how differently and how privileged my life was. I also have a connection in that my niece and nephew, their maternal grandfather was full-blooded Indian, and I don't know what tribe he was in, but his parents, in fact, lived on a reservation in North Dakota. So, well, I'm not of indigenous descent. I can feel empathy, and I can feel outrage that all these babies, some of them were literal babies that were taken from their homes and taken from their culture and never got to come home. It's kind of like in the the United States, we wiped out the buffalo, but we also, in that process of moving west and exploring, we wiped out people by the thousands, and cultures. So when orange came up, which is a symbol of these children, I knew that I was going to do some sort of a layout for them. And that's what this layout is. It was a tough one. This has about 4 layers on it because it just wasn't talking to me. So I kept painting over it and doing a new layer. But I'm pleased with how this one came out. But we need to be much more aware of our past. And so we don't keep repeating those same sorts of things. So this one's is for all those silenced children. So this one was hard to do, but good to do. So anyway, so then going back to lightness, for my last item, I did an assemblage piece, going back into the fairy stuff, and it was pretty funny. Is this yesterday? I was walking just by, sitting on the shelf was a piece, excuse me, of styrofoam. My daughter had gotten a fan a couple weeks ago, and for some reason this piece of styrofoam did not end up in the trash. It ended up on the shelf, and so I saw it, I grabbed it, I go, because I had been wanting to kind of do a shadow box, and it was like perfect for that. So I painted it all black, and then in the background I painted it with some metallics. Then I have a paper clay, molded paper clay piece that I'd had sitting for a year and a half on a shelf here in my studio. So I go, oh, perfect. I grabbed it, and it covered this hole that was in the back perfectly. So I did it in kind of some copper colors. You can see it in the back. And then I just started embellishing. I have some silk flowers that I put in. These are some mushrooms that I have a video on how to make these. They're all made out of coffee filters and different kinds of, just, paper and coffee filters. I think there might be tea bags. I don't know. It's been, excuse me, a little bit. So I use coffee filters on these. So I made a couple of those tea bags. And again, I'll put that video link in the description. And then just added some other elements, a butterfly, some rusty stuff, some wire. And then at the top, I put some, oops, turn it that way, some little bottles with stuff in them. It's kind of like a little, little fairy, without a fairy, a little fairy cave. And then I just put some little wood beads as legs on the bottom. And it just has kind of a cute little whimsical look to it, and it'll be cute just sitting on a shelf, and it gives a place for little fairies as they fly around to take a little bit of a rest. I have enough fairy houses in this studio that I think I have a few fairies fluttering around, so that gives them a cute little cushy place to sit on this flower and just take a little bit of break. So anyway, that is my 3 projects for, slide this over so I'm all in camera. So that's the 3 projects for this last and final week of our Seek, Gather, Create. And again, I do want to thank my co-hosts, Lisa, Tina, and Melanie, for their being such great co-hosts while we were doing this. This has been a blast, and we will be doing it again. I know a lot of people didn't want it to stop, but we decided rather than continuing, we'd rather do it again in the future. And so I look forward to seeing all of you then. In the meantime, I've been having a blast doing these things each week, so I may continue to a certain degree on them. And I do know that I will be filling my books out. And then I also am working on a class series that I have coming up. And so kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I have something coming up, a mixed media project that's a little bit 3D. It's a little bit book-like. It's a combination kind of thing, which I do a lot. And that's going to be starting in the middle of September and ending right about the first week of December, so right before the Christmas holiday. And there's going to be all sorts of different techniques, styles, and things that you're going to be learning each month or each week. And the videos for that will be releasing each week. So I'm looking forward to getting that finished up. And again, that will be starting up in the middle of September. It will all be pre-recorded. And then videos releasing one a week through. And so it's got 12 weeks worth of videos. So I'm looking forward to working on that. I have some other things coming up. Always more ideas than I have time for. But this has been incredibly fun, and I think has been incredibly nourishing for my creative soul. So I do want to continue on with some of these things. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining me, for watching my videos, for looking at what I've got going on Instagram. I'd love to have you follow me there. And it's been a blast. And thank you all. The best part is seeing what everybody's done with this challenge. It has been amazing. And I just so thank everybody who participated. You can still see what all of the different prompts are. So even if you weren't doing it during the course of when we were doing it during the month of August, you can take those prompts and start today if you want to. It doesn't have to be, in the time frame that we set up. You can do those same prompts, mix them up even if you want to. But it's kind of fun working with things that it's like, oh, dang, I don't know. I would never have thought to use that. So, so it's fun having prompt things like that. But, take a challenge and step outside what might be your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Art can be many things. Art can, speak a message or just be. So I just encourage you at some point to just take the first step and go from there. So you can see what everybody has done by going to the hashtag Seek.Gather.Create over on Instagram and take a look-see. It's been pretty amazing. So anyway, thanks a bunch for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.